Welcome in, everybody. I'm substituting for Thomas Hare and or John Yarrington, and this is the PDMI Take 20. I'm joined by some fantastic guests today, Jason Mezic from Paramount, Doug Bognar from Apex Media, and we are going to talk about connected TV. Take 20s are the bi-weekly webcasts from the PDMI, where we discuss the most current topics and new ideas in a short 20-minute conversation, guaranteed to generate questions and some more discussion. I'm going to guest spot as the host, and I'm your moderator today. I am broadcasting from a Las Vegas hotel lobby. My internet's not so great. So I'm going to turn my web camera off, and at the very end, come back on for questions and answers, but turn my camera off so that I can let these fine experts do most of the talking. Excellent. Here we go. Connected TV. Now we know the growth of connected TV is unstoppable. And Generation Z, which will be the largest consumer group in 2026, indicate they will be more apt to have streaming services on multiple devices than traditional linear TV. There's an article by Catherine Sullivan from the media agency PhD, and this was in September of 2021. She said, quote, "We're witnessing the biggest shift in viewership in a generation." In June of 2021, Nielsen indicated that streaming accounts maybe 26% of all the time spent on TV. But when you fast forward to an article posted just March of 2022, a couple of months ago, 55% of Americans have now cut the cord. And since during the pandemic, OTT, over-the-top media services, are growing with more than 182 million subscribers in the US alone. And from an article in Statistics by Insider Intelligence, is noted that paid TV households might drop below 50% as soon as next year. So, clearly, the statistical shift is accelerating towards connected TV. It's just a question of how fast and how broad-reaching it will be. We know this creates a new advertising opportunity for media outlets, brands, and agencies. And Jeff Green, CEO of the largest independent ad buying platform, The Trade Desk, predicts that, quote, by the second half of 2023, every major streaming service, HBO Max, Disney Plus, and Netflix, etc., will offer consumers a low-cost, ad-supported version of their platform. Lot to talk about. We're so excited, and we are going to jump in with Doug first, and I'm going to ask you the very first question, Doug, is do you believe in Jeff Green's predictions that every major streaming service will have an ad-supported version?
Absolutely. And Netflix has proven that even the impenetrable will be driven by ad sales. And not only that, they'll have a free version too. So I think that three-tier arrangement that we've seen from so many so far, a fast, free ad-supported streaming television service to begin, to invite a number with low barrier to entry viewers, then a ad-supported version with a limited number of ads, and then potentially a version that is ad-free. So yeah, I totally believe in that.
Interesting. Jason, what about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with him. And, I'm part of, the Paramount family here now, but I started off my position here at Pluto, which was one of the first free ad-supported streaming services out there. And we started that before the term fast was even a thing. But that's, really one of like the buzzwords and the entry points that Doug mentioned that has just grown so much and has shown a lot of value, not just to the consumer who's watching that content, but also to the advertisers who are tapping into that entire audience.
What I think is interesting about that is you see the evolution of connected TV rapidly grow, and it follows consumer behavior. Some consumers who will pay, some consumers who don't want to pay, but they will get through those ads. I also believe that the new generation of viewers, Generation Z and then now Generation Alpha, are so used to pre-roll ads on YouTube that they're accustomed to some type of promotion before looking at the content that they actually want. So broadcast, that this could be a 4-hour. That makes a lot of sense to me. Doug, you had mentioned before the hour take 20. We only have 20 minutes, so we do want to get to some other questions. Jason, I guess I'll stick with you. What are some of the trends that you see that are going to be indicative of future growth and change? You mentioned how Pluto came up as an ad-supported network. Now you're on Paramount. You're seeing several different viewpoints of the landscape. So what do you see are going to be the biggest drivers of future growth and change?
I mean, I think it all comes down to content, right? So, all of the publishers, ourselves definitely included at the top of that list there, are investing tons of money in content, and we're just finding the ways to distribute it out there. And kind of like Doug said, and kind of is stole directly from our pitch, and not that I'm here to give you our pitch, but we fully embrace those three ecosystems, right? Free with Pluto. We have our subscribers, so our TV Everywhere, authenticated apps that people that are cable subscribers can tap into, and then we have our subscription on-demand service with Paramount Plus. And we're not the only ones who have that sort of model. That's sort of the way everybody's been doing it now, because that's the way people are watching, right? So when we look at our audiences, and one of the things that you mentioned before about the younger generations, we have with Nickelodeon have seen an increase in the amount of time spent on Nickelodeon content, and yes, that time spent viewing is shifting more towards the streaming and the Nickelodeon apps, and towards the Nickelodeon content on either Pluto or Paramount Plus. But at the end of the day, these are children and families that are still watching that content on a big screen. I think that's the other thing to point out there, is that when we're talking about streaming, almost the vast majority of this is happening on the biggest and best screen in the house, right? That's a connected TV device. It's the living room. There's a big co-viewing story of parents watching with kids for children content, families watching content together. You're getting, a huge amount of audience there.
Right. I think that's interesting, and the data from the industry, I think, supports and corroborates what you've said. I read some of the research in preparation for this, that Disney Plus, I believe, is investing $35 billion in their own content development. You think of all the properties with Star Wars and Marvel and the Disney content itself. There's endless content, endless characters for streaming services and episodic content on those services. Doug, what do you see as some of these big kind of future growth, change drivers?
So you broke up a little bit there, Chris, but I think I know where you're going. I know you well enough. I think a lot of this is going to come down to something we don't think about a lot, and Jason mentioned it with the big screen. The biggest screen in our house dominates viewing time, and that's the operating systems that run those devices. Right now it's Roku and Android, which is now being rebranded as Google TV and Fire TVs. Interestingly, Comcast is now producing their own television, the X class, and they're using their X1 operating system. Samsung has a very well developed and distributed operating system. So those are the areas. I mean, I think those are really interesting developments, and who wins. And if you wonder why, well, why does that matter? Well, I would say to you, do you have an iPhone or do you have an Android phone? Or do you have a Mac or do you have a PC? Because that device drives the rest of your social media interaction, your entertainment consumption, and a whole lot of your life. So operating systems are the new major battleground. And then there's a couple of outliers there too. Like, okay, Apple. What is Apple doing besides sitting on literally $1 trillion worth of cash? And another one I'll throw out there that they're sitting on the sidelines. They've dipped their toe in, they've dipped their toe out. Walmart. Walmart sells an ungodly number of TVs, a lot of them their own private brand, but they rely on somebody else's operating system. What do? So I think those operating systems from here on out are where the real battles take place. To Jason's point about content, Netflix, as we mentioned earlier, is going to an ad-supported model, and they will absolutely go to an episodic model as well. You cannot afford to continue to attract and retain viewers if you drop all 30 episodes of some crappy show and everyone knows it's crappy on day 2.
Right.
You don't have a chance to build and maintain an audience. So,
and I think what's interesting about that, Doug, is that you have this blend now, or these two major drivers of content and operating system, and that then cuts across devices and almost cuts across brands, right? So the idea of Google TV perhaps manufacturing their own, Samsung creating another operating system that is within Samsung, developing their own partnerships with Netflix or Disney Plus and the like. Those are all the things that you can see where the technology and the hardware combines with the service itself and the content providers. I also, touch on the Netflix model, where now that Netflix is also leaning into theatrical releases, it really broadens their portfolio of the kinds of content they can put together. They can make series and episodes that are specific for ad-supported subscriptions versus ones that are not, and kind of gives them even more range in terms of, do I want a theatrical release? Maybe this theatrical release is only available in our premium subscription service, right? And then they can make a lot of different choices based on their own original content versus content that they're distributing from other providers. It's going to be, I think, a wide open field, and it gives them tremendous flexibility in terms of where they go from a strategic standpoint.
Jason, I love to hear Jason talk about the strategy with regard to content for broadcast networks as opposed to streaming. I mean, it appears to me that, and cable networks, I'll throw those into as well. The really premium content is available on that, say, of CBS on Pluto or Paramount Plus as opposed to CBS. And that's very, very interesting. I think there are different approaches to it, but I think Jason can speak to that with more authority than I can.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. And I think, and I obviously can speak most about Paramount, the Paramount global brands. But I think this was also a theme across all the broadcast upfronts last week, right? Last week was upfront week. And I think there was a lot of talk about, everybody's talking about content and being sort of agnostic about where it was going to be running, right? So we do have the ability to take, that new show and run it on CBS or on Paramount Plus. It's interesting when you mentioned the devices before, and it kind of made me think of, we do have limitations though, and those MVPDs still have a lot of clout with the cable networks, right? So we can't take, new shows from a lot of our cable channels here and run them for free on Pluto. We can put them on Paramount Plus because it's subscription, but that is part of our distribution agreements, and that's not something that's going to be changing anytime soon. So that's why you are going to see on the free side slightly older episodes of content from the cable networks, but we can show new content from CBS because they're not beholden to those contracts with the MVPDs. And so I think what you're seeing is, like you said, an opportunity really for the publishers and the networks and the broadcasters to take their content and really put it across all screens so they can reach everybody at all times. And that's a big part of the push too for our streaming success is the incrementality, right? You're hitting an incremental audience to your broadcast audience or to your linear cable TV audience.
Awesome.
And I think that's our strategy there.
Jason, I'll stick with you on this next question. Then what happens with cable?
I mean, listen, cable is not, I don't think cable is going anywhere. I think that these trends are going to continue, but we are still supporting our cable networks. We're still, producing new content for our cable networks, but we're also seeing, a lot of our brands working together, right? So, one of our new shows coming out on CBS is CBS All Stars, which is kind of the challenge show from MTV, but it's going to be with the MTV host TJ Lavin and all of the reality shows from CBS, so like Survivor and Survivor, and I'm being a really bad CBS employee here. I'm dropping the name Amazing Race, which is one of my favorite shows. But
and other great reality TV shows.
exactly. So this was a format that worked really well on MTV for years by taking the real world and road rules and doing these challenges. So we're seeing that move over with that same format to CBS. So I think that's pretty exciting.
Well, and what I think is interesting is that while cable might drop below 50% in the next year or so, I think you're right. I think it will always persist. It's just that we'll be better balanced with connected TV options.
Chris, what's happening now is you've got the cable operators have reduced their subscriber base to their most lucrative customer. It's those who have, maybe a multiple. They have the highest number of channels. They buy the big package. They maybe have a bundle with with their broadband service, etc. So an interesting recent development is Comcast and Charter joining forces to develop their own streaming service. And by the way, that is likely the way that cable as we know it will be delivered in the future. It'll be all IP based. And so they're deploying that X1 operating system across their set-top boxes and setting themselves up as a true media hub to manage all of those subscriptions, potentially manage and a single bill all of your subscriptions to Paramount Plus, to HBO Max, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a role that they know really, really well. In so many ways, the current state of streaming is very much like the nascent early days of cable television, and the great unbundling of networks and content that has been really the thing that people love the most, or like a lot at least, with streaming, is now calling for a rebundling. But the customization of that bundle, the flexibility to go in and out of a service, are the things that are attractive, I think, to a customer.
Yeah, I know I like that idea because there is I think a market need for the unification of the various payments. All the surveys and data indicates that the average household might have 4+ streaming services, right? And then what happens though if the cable industry starts to collect and, like you say, bundle these streaming services in a streaming service of their own, couched under the umbrella of the cable, right? And so I think what we find is that what connected TV has helped us to do as consumers is rethink our options, right? Because before we could, I'm old enough to remember when I had 3 channels, right? I had 3 big network channels that we would watch. And then Fox came on as oh my gosh, it's a new network. Like, that was crazy. And then, right, and then cable showed up and had a bazillion choices, and we acclimated, right? We adjusted, and now as consumers, we have a new adjustment to make with new opportunities and new options that we didn't have that were available before. That we didn't have that are available now that weren't available before. And so I think that cable companies and streaming companies will then reconfigure themselves to the new customer behaviors.
Well, maybe not in truth, but at least in perception, the leverage has returned to the viewer. And with their ability to, again, dip in and out of these services. I mean, you look at their churn rate for most of these services, and they're just, they're off the charts. But that's the attraction. You can go in and you can go out. So and the consumer is always, well, listen, I want a bundle, but I wanted my own custom bundle. And I know Verizon has done some work with this, but it's all based on their 5G service, which is really not very good even yet.
Sure.
But once that technology comes to bear, and the ability does exist with existing MVPDs, I think that's a big player. That keeps cable companies alive.
Right. So Jason, I guess if I was going to ask you what you're most excited about for the rest of this year and go to 2023 regarding CTV, most excited about?
I think I heard the end of your question there. So what am I most excited about in CTV? I think just the absolute growth in the amount of users, the scale that we can bring to our advertisers and our clients, and sort of Also, again, we really didn't talk about this much, but some of the new innovative things we can do in this space with integrated ads or interactive ads rather, and along those lines with as well as targeting and things like that.
Excellent. That's a great way to wrap it up, you guys. We are at actually 20 minutes. I would like to open this up then for questions. I'm actually going to put myself on the camera, and we do have a couple of questions, and here we go. Question for you guys. I'm going to actually defer to both of you as experts. How big, meaning total viewers, is the CTV marketplace in the US, and how does this compare to the linear universe?
Jason?
I mean, it's pretty massive. When we're talking about the ad-supported CTV universe, I guess I can really only speak for our own footprint, which is well over 80 million right now with monthly episode viewers for our family.
Here's my take on it as a media buyer. Not big enough and not easily accessible to the degree that we would like. So scale is an issue, and metrics. Audience measurement is an issue. Different platforms use different metrics to determine viewership. So those are the things that, that's sort of the nomenclature that'll get worked out, I think. I know it will, because the ad community's really banging away on that door and wants it to be fixed, and it will be. But I don't, that's a big question mark in my mind. Who's really watching? Chris, did we lose you?
Looks like we did. We really lost them.
Now we lost him completely. I think we lost Chris. Everyone.
Hi, you know what? I can actually read some of these questions for you guys.
I'm still here. I just had to turn on my.
Okay, Chris, I'll let you take it.
Very came off because the internet isn't so great. So I guess one of the questions that came through is, what are the major challenges when it comes to measuring the CTV attribution?
Go ahead,
you want
Jason.
to take that one, or you want me to tell him?
Well, I think I kind of touched on it. There's different metrics that different platforms are using. There isn't a good, I guess I'll say there's not a reliable source at this yet for third-party metrics. Nobody's really reporting it to the degree that the ad community would like. And again, I think these things are all, these are resolvable, and we'll get there.
And yeah, sorry not to cut you off, but there are obviously third parties out there that have, been able to sort of close the gap and find ways to really make measurement work. And I think, there's a lot of secret sauce in that, in that mix. But I do, from what I've seen, these are, there are ways to measure it, and a lot of it is IP based, IP address based, right? So I mean, I think that's it has its limitations, but it also is for directional, attribution. I do believe it does work, and we just, you recently have seen TV Squared get acquired by Innovid, right? So it's not just performance brands that are starting to look into those metrics. It's, all advertisers, all brands want to know what kind of effect their ads are having, and who's, going in and actually going to the website or downloading the app or whatever their metric is.
Well, ACR has a lot of promise, of course, and and that comes from the TV manufacturers in many cases. I know I just read something that TiVo thinks that they can be the be all and end all in the space. I don't know who it is, or if it'll be anyone or a combination of many, but this walled garden, the multiple walled gardens that are out there right now. Those, in order for this space to truly grow and reach its potential, those walls have to come down, and I fully believe that they will. It's just a matter of time.
I agree, and we have many other episodes specifically dedicated to attribution, so we can dive into that more. Jason, this question is for you. From an outlet perspective, what vertical markets are having the most success using CTV on Paramount's properties?
Great
And
question.
what other markets are poised for similar success?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, direct-to-consumer brands are, I would say, are first, the first to test the waters in CTV, and have been doing the most and growing the most. But we're seeing strong growth from a lot of different categories, including from a performance side, insurance. Those direct-to-consumers have been huge for us. So.
Excellent. I guess for Doug, I'll pass this off to you. From an agency perspective, how interested are your clients in CTV opportunities currently? Do you think they're over-indexing due to the buzz of the outlet, or they're staying within the industry curve?
Oh, good. That's a very good question as well, and it varies from client to client. Jason just touched on it. Performance marketers are ready to dive in because if the phone rings, if they order, if orders come across, that's their measurement tool. I think there's more caution from image advertising, image advertisers, brand advertisers, just because of what we were talking about previously. Unfamiliarity with the space. There is excitement. There is a lot of buzz about it, as you mentioned, but just sort of being unsure about the metrics associated with who they're reaching. I mean, we can talk about highly targeted ads at major CPM levels, and I think that works for some advertisers, but certainly not the majority of them.
Okay,
yeah,
that's an excellent answer. So we have time for one last question. This is a quick hit between the two of you. Jason, we'll start with you. What are the top 2 advantages brands are experiencing with CTV versus traditional TV advertising?
Top 2 advantages over traditional TV advertising. So I guess I would say there's at least, there's a lot of selectivity. So it's a one-to-one conversation. We have the ability to hone in on kinds of programming and genres that might not be available, when you're just buying across a broad, day part on a day part network, and just an immense amount of scale.
Nice. One-to-one, home in on a content to match the consumer, and then to scale that out. I love it. Douglas?
I think targeting is number 1, and I don't know what a number 2 is, other than that you're in the nascent stage of, it's still a novel space for advertisers in many ways, and getting in on the ground floor does provide a fair amount of intelligence going forward.
That's interesting. I do like that idea of kind of the first mover opportunity. When first movers went into Facebook advertising and other people followed, those first movers were months ahead in terms of knowledge and expertise in terms of how to, use the channel. So that's fantastic. I love it. Gents, that was wonderful. And you are so gracious in terms of me being a floating voice from the
No worries.
I appreciate that very much. And to the audience, thank you so much for participating and viewing these guys talk about the connected TV space. They are absolute masters of their craft, and I really hope you enjoyed the conversation and took something away to the office that you can share with your teammates. The next episode of the PDMI Take 20 is in 2 weeks. Stay tuned for details about that, and we look forward to hearing from you and your questions in the next episode 2 weeks from now. So on behalf of Thomas and John and all the PDMI teammates, as Chris Foster, I say thank you very much and farewell. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you next time.